Hi there, this is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, and welcome to another random review. Today's random review is Buck and the Preacher from 1972, directed by Sidney Poitier and starring Sidney Poitier, Harry Belafonte, Cameron Mitchell and the wonderful Ruby Dee. This film was covered by friend of the channel Roger Kirby in his 1972 season, where he is reviewing just about every film from 1972, so I'll put a link to his channel and to the video, his review of Buck and the Preacher. Go subscribe to his channel if you haven't, because it's excellent, and as I say, amongst other things, he's reviewing every film from 1972. So this is a Western, an African American based Western about after the Civil War, slaves were given their freedom, but then there were gangs of raiders essentially bringing or attempting to bring them back to work on the plantations rather than actually have their freedom and try and find their own piece of land. And Buck, played by Sidney Poitier, is somebody who helps the wagon train of ex-slaves to try and find them safe passage. And he has a kind of alliance with the local Native American tribe to let the wagons go through. The leader who is on his trail, played by Cameron Mitchell, is a little bit like the Klaus Kinski character in Corbucci's The Great Silence, in the sense that yes, he's doing a job, but he ends up getting a little bit too carried away, and he kind of goes and raids on these wagon trains and kills people, and this is not so much cajoling them to go back to get jobs on plantations. It's more an excuse to just wreak violence on people. And we come across Belafonte's preacher character. We don't get any other name. He's naked and washing himself in a river, and Poitier steals his horse at gunpoint, so he's on a different horse, so Cameron Mitchell's mob won't follow him. Belafonte is obviously known for looking gorgeous, but in this film it's a completely different Belafonte. He's got shaggier hair, he's got messed up teeth, and he really comes across as a mixture of the devil and the fox from Pinocchio, and he has that great gravelly voice full of grit, and he puts on this act of this fanatical preacher to certain people, and he's a bit more reserved with other people, and it does that wonderful dynamic that for me The Good, the Bad and Ugly does the best of any film ever, of the relationship between these two characters that don't really like each other but kind of respect each other, but they would quite happily sell each other down the river. Belafonte's character would quite happily take the $500 that Cameron Mitchell's offered for information or where to find Buck. So the relationship between the two, it has that kind of edge which is really enjoyable. Plus the other thing is it would be kind of easy to make these two characters, because obviously Poitier and Belafonte are such stars, to make them to be heroes, but both of them do dodgy things. I mean, obviously Poitier steals, he brutally murders people, and the preacher is just basically looking to see what he can get out of situations. And we learn how he carries a Bible around, which has a similar kind of purpose as the coffin in Corbucci's Django. That's 2 Corbucci mentions in one video. And we find out how he got to be this preacher character, and how he got the Bible. So they're 2 characters that aren't perfect, that aren't kind of shining examples of virtue, which gives the film a kind of realism. It doesn't shy away from the fact that when Buck is having a conversation with the local Native American chief, the chief, when he says that, the blonde-haired people are, the black people's enemy as well, the chief does kind of point out, well, you fought for the blonde-haired people against us, because Buck is referred to as Sergeant by the Native American translator. It's always good when films have a Native American translator, played by Harry Belafonte's wife, I'll add. So there's still that acknowledgement that some black people became soldiers after the Civil War, joined the cavalry, and killed Native Americans. So it doesn't shy away from that as well. And again, I do like the fact that both the 2 main characters are far from perfect. But no matter what they do, you're obviously on their side because it's Harry Belafonte and it's Sidney Poitier. Ruby Dee is fantastic as always as Sidney Poitier's wife. I assume she's his wife. She has a great speech about how they'll never find peace in America and they need to go up north to Canada because it's like a poison on the land. The fact that they'll never actually be free. So Ruby Dee knocks it out of the park, as she always does. And obviously Poitier is fantastic. But Belafonte is such a revelation, again, because he looks nothing like Belafonte. And one of the extras, he talks about how he wanted to kind of change his face and he wasn't really getting the character until he put kind of eyeliner on his teeth and kind of messed his teeth up. And then he kind of got that character. The film itself was supposed to be directed by Joseph Sargent, who did The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. And he did shoot some stuff, but Poitier and Belafonte, who were both producers, because obviously they were big stars at this point, and they both had production companies, didn't feel it was going the right way, so Sargent was dismissed, and Belafonte apparently suggested Poitier, who'd never directed before. He'd obviously go on to direct Stir Crazy with Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor, and Ghost Dad with Bill Cosby. But there's actually some really nice shots in the film. There's a wonderful shot from below Sidney Poitier when he's blazing his guns. There's some really nice compositions that Poitier uses. The countryside is kind of interesting browns and greens that you don't necessarily see in westerns that much. There's a strange kind of palette, which looks kind of fresh. You could argue the ending is perhaps a little upbeat, but I'll let them off of that. But it's just so much fun. It's one of those films that obviously didn't do that well, but you could actually see a sequel, because I would certainly want to spend more time with Buck and the Preacher. So this is the new Criterion. It's Region B. It's spine number 1140, and this has a booklet with an essay, and it's got nice internal artwork as well. Sidney Poitier looking like the Wild Bunch there. As far as the extras, sadly there's no commentary, but there is an interview with Mia Mark, who's an author of Black Rodeo, A History of the African American Western, which is a really good piece, because I didn't know that The Lone Ranger was actually based on the exploits of an African American. The fact that cowboy might have actually been started as a slur, and white guys on the ranch were known as cow hands, and cowboy might have come from actually go get that cow boy. And also she points out that the story of the Searchers was perhaps actually an African American, not John Wayne, that the story was actually based on. So that's a fascinating essay. There's behind the scenes footage. There's 3 pieces from 1971 with Poitier and Belafonte, and there's interviews with Poitier and Belafonte from episodes of television shows, Soul and the Dick Cavett Show. Again, when you watch these Dick Cavett interviews, it's like, how did that man ever get a television show? And there's a new interview with Gina Belafonte, the daughter of Harry Belafonte. So it's a really fun film. It looks fantastic on the Blu-ray, and I mean, it's Poitier, Belafonte and Ruby Dee. I mean, you can't ask for much more than that. It does actually have a couple of surprises, things you're not quite expecting. There is some comedy in it, but again, it's more kind of realistic comedy rather than knockabout comedy. It is actually quite brutal in a couple of places, and like I say, it is actually full of a couple of surprises. So actually, for an accidental directorial debut, it's actually really good. And like I say, I did with having a sequel and revisiting these characters, because even though they're not perfect, which again is what I like about them, you know, Belafonte's character especially is a rascal. He's a hustler, because there is a mystery about a certain amount of money that's never actually found. I don't know whether they just forgot about it, but that kind of plot point is never really resolved. Unless it is. You'll have to watch the film to find out. So thanks very much for watching this random review of Buck and the Preacher, and hopefully you'll join me again for more random reviews. Please let me know in the comments below if you've seen Buck and the Preacher and what you think of it. And again, go over and check out Roger Kirby's video and channel. I'll leave the link below. And this is Solitude Ronin from Solitude Ronin Films saying farewell.